Hey guys, Classic here. In the next couple videos, I will share my thoughts on feedback concerning the future of Rocket League. What I would change, what ideas I have to make the game better. Not that the game itself is in a bad state right now, contrary to what a lot of people say on Twitter and, oh, Rocket League is dying, blah, blah, blah. This is not these types of videos. It's not like, oh, if you don't do that, Rocket League's gonna die. That's not the point. But obviously, the game's not perfect. No game ever is perfect. So in this series, I will share my feedback in the best possible way. I will kick things off with the first major change I would do to Rocket League. And it might not be a popular one at first, but please hear me out and try to understand where I'm coming from. And if you disagree with it, it'd be great if you told me why and what you would change. Sometimes, the idea is close to perfect, but it isn't, and I'm fine with that. I don't think whatever I'm gonna suggest in this video series will be, taken as is. I don't think that. But I just want this to be a start of conversation. So let me just go straight into it. And my first major change that I want to see in Rocket League is rotational/seasonal maps, and more specifically non-standard maps. And I know we've talked a lot about it. There's a lot of discussions going around. Oh my god, not again. We talked about it multiple times. And yes, again, we'll talk about it again because I'm not satisfied with what we have right now. And I did a complete 180 on that. And with this idea, I hope you reconsider your position. So what is rotational and seasonal non-standard maps? Well, before going to the strict details, I'm gonna give you a too long didn't what. TLDW, I want seasons to bring with them non-standard maps and Psyonix to iterate on them to bring freshness into both the ranked Rocket League and the pro scene. I want them both. And I think this can be achieved with non-standard maps. Now, I'm gonna go into way more details right now. So first of all, I'm going to start with why I think we need this. First of all, when you compare Rocket League to sports, everyone says, soccer has been the same thing, or football has been the same thing for years. So what's the point of changing things in Rocket League? Well, two major differences. Rocket League is a video game. It's not a sport, even though we like comparing both of them. And, we could argue video games are a sport, but whatever, it's not a traditional sport. You get my point. And there's major differences why a video game will not have the same lifespan as a traditional sports without changing. For multiple reasons, I'm not going to go into this in this video, but I will probably make one in the near future explaining why comparing both is flawed. And also comparing it to other video games, which I will probably do a few times in this video, just for the sake of examples, but that doesn't mean, because X video games do it, Rocket League needs to do it. First of all, my major point why we need that, even though we haven't reached the Rocket League ceiling skills yet, we are getting closer and closer and closer, and actually reaching it is kind of not the point. A lot of people feel that there's no new things to learn. And I'm mostly speaking of like that 0.01%, that grinds Rocket League 8 hours a day, and they're already so good that, yes, there are still areas where people can improve, but I feel that adding non-standard maps would bring freshness and other stuff to learn from them so they don't get bored of learning the same things over and over and over and over again. I don't know any game ever that lasted years without any kind of freshness into it. Except maybe Super Smash Bros. Melee. But if you look at League of Legends, Overwatch, and the top esports, even Counter-Strike, even Fortnite, they keep fresh by adding new guns, new champions/heroes, map changes. Even if League has the same map, there's been multiple map changes in the years, and that's not counting the new champions, the revamped rune systems, a lot of changes that make both the pro players and casual players entertain and have a sense of freshness in the game. Even if it's the same damn thing, at least there's some changes, so you gotta learn new stuff. My second point is the casual player or the person that grinds maybe, 2 hours per week, that have no intention of going pro. Having these new maps introduce each season might be enough for them to keep playing that game, 2 hours per week and not get bored of it. Not every player is like me, but what really pushes me to play Rocket League more is because I want to get better. But if I didn't have that in me, that intrinsic motivation to get better, I would have stopped because the game never changes. The only thing that pushes me forward is my drive to be a better player, but that's not the case for everyone. Some people need external motivation. And third of all, it would be fantastic for content creation. Obviously, I am biased. I am a content creator. But for a game to thrive, you need a healthy competitive scene and a healthy content creation scene. And ask any Rocket League YouTuber or ex-Rocket League YouTuber, what can they talk about? There's no new fresh things except sometimes a new car where you see every vids pop up like, oh, this new car is OP and whatnot, because it's the only thing they can talk about. And there's a reason why there's a lot of people moving away from content creation for Rocket League, even though they still love the game. I really feel like that would help keep them making content to keep the player base entertained. All right, so we all know that the first time they were introduced, non-standard maps were a flop, and I think there's 3 reasons for that. 1, pros did not really embrace them, and as little as some people think, oh, that doesn't impact the average player, I would say that this is not true. Not because we see a pro say, oh, this non-standard map's not good, and everyone will go, oh, well, yeah, this is shit. But it's more perverse than that and more slow. No one with the community backing them up. Slowly, the vocal people that are mad against them will win. The actual maps could have been a problem too. If an idea is great, but the execution is poor, that doesn't mean the idea was poor. Maybe it's just how it was implemented. So maybe it's simply the maps that just were not quite there. And from multiple conversation, there's a lot of people that, were, Neo Tokyo was this close of actually being great, but it just wasn't. And, instead of maybe scrapping the whole concept, iterating a bit would have been better. And lastly, it was not fully integrated into the ecosystem of Rocket League. You could avoid it fairly well in ranked, only playing it once or twice in a huge play session. So you didn't really have to care about it because it wasn't that obvious. If you had to play a non-standard map 1 game out of 2, eventually you'll just power through and you'll start to learn it because you can't avoid it. Same thing for RLCS. They were never implemented there. So people that want to get to the pro level had no reason to waste time on those maps. There were no incentive to actually play those. So here's how I would implement them.
Please note that the numbers I'm going to use are simply examples and they can be modified. If you see how I describe it and you say, oh, well, this is too few or this is too much, that doesn't really matter. The point is to simply convey the idea.
It's a starting point. So the first thing I would do before implementing non-standard maps is make sure that when you actually launch them, people back them up. And not by, just creating the map and say, hey guys, back it up. No, create the first few maps with a focus group or, a couple of pros, a couple of content creators, a couple of analysts that, have critical thinking and don't, always complain or aren't always overly optimistic, because you want good critique. And make sure that the first few you have are solid because that is important. If you're going back to non-standard maps, it needs to be a hit. Otherwise, it's just gonna die again. It's a risky move to re-implement them, so you need backup. Second of all, I would make integration of new standard maps along the line ranked seasons. And for the sake of it, I would try to make the ranked seasons and the RLCS seasons line up. And I'm gonna tell you why in my next point. But, seasons could be a tad longer, and I would implement new maps when a new season comes in, because right now, going from Season 7 to Season 8 has no impact whatsoever on nothing apart from rewards and making it super hard for the champion ones of this world that have to go against pros because of the soft reset. So I'm going to go into a specific example to convey the idea. Let's say we are moving to Season 6 of RLCS and Season 9 of Ranked Season. What I would do is, okay, we're going into Season 9 of Ranked. Here is 3 new non-standard maps. And when I say non-standard, it could be either as wild as pillars or simply as making the map wider, lengthier, making nets into the middle of the back wall, just small things, you know, it doesn't need to be out of this world. So let me get back. So season 9 gets introduced, and with it 3 to 5 new non-standard maps. And for the first set, like I said, remember my first point, make sure that people back it up and that it's a great, you know, few sets. And I would not implement it directly into the RLCS season. I would wait for the next one just to give time to pros to actually learn them, you know. And how I would implement those in RLCS is making it map pick and bans. And I know a lot of people are like, no, we're not League of Legends, fuck that. But I think it's really important, kind of similar to Smash or League. And in those BO5s, I would force at least 2 non-standard maps in those. You can have 3 standards and 2 non-standard. I'm fine with that. But I would force 2 non-standard to force people to learn them and actually play them. I mean, people might complain, obviously, but the good thing is, since they are now in line with seasons, if, you know, out of your 3 maps, 1 is garbage, everyone hates it, that's fine. With the next season, let's say season 10 in this scenario, you retire the map and you either scrap it or you iterate it and you re-implement it season 11, you know, the one after that. And I would, at that point, always add at least 1 to 2 new maps every season. That way, whenever we get a season rollover, we have a change, freshness. People will look forward to new seasons. Oh my god, yes, we got 2 new maps, and thank god this map is out of the rotation because we hated it. That way, people would probably give more constructive criticism on maps they dislike if they know they can be changed by small iterations and that they're not going to be forced to play it forever if it's flawed. And lastly, I would gather feedback from everyone, but mostly from pros, analysts, and see what they like and dislike, because it needs to be loved at the top so it can sprinkle down. Same things with community figures. It's important. They have a lot of influence on the games, like it or not. So this is how I would do seasonal rotational season. Please leave some feedback. I love to talk about Rocket League. If you disagree, that's fine. Tell me why, and see you next time.